Hey everyone, and welcome. Today is part 2 of Mel's transport journeys, and today we're going to be talking about public transport. This refers to buses, trains, ferries, and anything in between that can get you to point A and point B on the public transport network, or light rails too. I've got some interesting stories, and let's go from there. So here are some interesting stories of travel that I've had over the last 5 to 6 years. Actually, it's more close to 6 years. This may be the 7th year. Either way, let's get into it. So story number 1 is to do with trains. Now, before I begin anything, I will say that people, for the most part, it's a good experience, but sometimes not so much. I do know that people can be forgetful, and I don't necessarily blame them. So story 1 has to do with train stations and the attendants who are supposed to be getting you on and off the train. Oh, to preface this, I'm in a wheelchair. I need assistance boarding trains and buses. So, like I said, people forget, people get busy. But when it's at a train station, but if you are someone with a disability that needs someone to bring the ramp for you, and you get busy, and there's no one else that works on the platform, then this gets tricky. So I've been forgotten on a train a lot of time. I wouldn't say a lot of times, probably 5 or 6 times. I've had to go from my destination and along the Richmond in Sydney line in particular, this has actually happened. So there have been times where train station staff have forgotten entirely, and sometimes the guard has to come and get me off. That's fine. But when there's no attendant at the station, I don't actually know their official titles, but that's where things get interesting. Anyway, so I was supposed to get off at Blacktown Station here in Sydney, and there was no one there to get me off, and I was panicking because this has never happened before. So anyway, so when you hop on a train, the attendant at the station obviously has to call the next station you're getting off at. So everything was called ahead. All cool. Like I said, no one was there. By the time someone had called the next station along saying, hey, there's a lady in a wheelchair that needs to come back to Blacktown, can you get her off? I had already left Marion to Quakers Hill along the Richmond line, and they had to send me back to Blacktown. But I did actually learn something the next time that actually happened, because we had the lady on the station at Quakers Hill Station actually told me, hey, if this actually does happen to you again, push the emergency button in the actual carriage and let the guard know that someone forgot to get you off at this station or whatever station, and go from there. So I've had to do that a couple of times and be like, hey, I'm in a carriage, someone forgot to get me off at the station, can you help me? There's also been times where people on the train notice that there's no one to get me off, and they have a quick look around or a wave at the guard to help as well. So People on public transport, you can also ask for help to see if they can see anyone on the platform for you. Thank you to people who have actually helped me when the train station attendants were nowhere in sight. I appreciate you. Kind of deal. Like I said, people are forgetful, and I'm never really, for the first couple of times, I wasn't really that bothered by it. But when it's happened like 2 or 3 more times after that, that is when I started getting more annoyed. Another instance of a train station forgetting is they never actually call the destination. That's happened a few times. And it happened one more recently while I was heading to Central Station. The guy I waved over was like, "Did you actually want to get off here or the next station across?" Which I think it was Town Hall. I was like, "No." He called ahead. The person at the station called ahead, said he was going to call ahead for me to get off at Central Station. Nope. I don't think he actually called. Like I said, mishaps happen, and it's how you deal with it, but it makes me look like an idiot. But ultimately, when someone miscommunicates something, it actually reflects back on me. It makes me look incompetent, that I may have told someone the wrong station when I actually told them the right station. I once got on a bus at the local shopping centre to come back home, and this old guy comes up to me and he's like, "So, can you let me on first?" I was like, "Okay." But then I was like, "Yeah, sure, okay." But then he goes, "Oh, it's just because you're going to block the walkway and no one can get past you." I was sitting there like, you do know that on a bus there are designated spots for a wheelchair or a pram to sit. All you have to do is just lift the seat up and do. I don't think this guy, like, he was an older guy, so I don't know if he actually knew. I don't think he ever saw a wheelchair on a bus before. I just find that one funny, more because of a miscommunication on someone else's part. But yeah, you don't sit in the aisle of a bus when you're in a wheelchair. You sit in the obviously designated spots. All you have to do is just pull the seat up. That's all. And while we're on the topic of buses, look, I have no problem with walking frames on buses. None at all. I have problems with certain types of prams on buses. You know those big twin type prams that are wider than my chair. I mean, there's been times when someone's looked at me and goes, your wheelchair's too big to be in that spot. I've had issues with more or less prams. Especially, like I said, those big twin prams. Like I said, another one point we can put is sometimes other people are just disrespectful. And I've actually come across this with prams and some older person with a walking frame. I've seen it so many times, it's not even funny. Where the mother with the pram will get pissy at someone with a walking frame because they have to sit there more than the mother needs to stand. I've had to play Tetris with prams, walking frames, and other wheelchairs on a bus before. It's a little more tricky than if you had to do it, say, on a train. But it's doable. You just got to have a bit more patience. And like I said, I've got nothing against mothers or fathers with prams on buses. But I do actually have a problem, like I said, if it's a twin-seater or if the mother or father is totally rude. I've had some great encounters with mothers on buses before. There was one in particular where she did actually have a big twin pram, but she was actually really, really nice, and we both figured out a way for both of us to get off at the stop we needed and didn't bump into each other. I still get really, really weird looks when I'm on public transport, especially if there's multiple prams involved. Even when I get on there first and a couple of prams get on, I still get weird looks. But other than that, like I said, I have nothing against parents with prams. I just have a problem with double-seaters and parents with bad attitudes. Actually, I've got a problem with people. Another one on my list is people in general on public transport. They can be so rude. And I'm not going into this story on this video, but I have actually had a problem with an older woman in one of those mobility scooters you find in a store, like a shop or a shopping center or a mall, that aren't technically supposed to be on. Those types of ones aren't supposed to be on there because your wheelchair needs to be a certain size to be able to actually get on a bus. This woman's wasn't. It doesn't matter if the driver told her, we've already got a wheelchair on here. You can't come on here. She'd kick up a major stink. Geez, she stopped going on public transport, and I've bumped into her a few times at the shopping centre, and she was all nice to me one day, even though she had caused me a lot of mental instability, emotional instability, because she'd always go off at me. She would always yell at people, and that's not on for anybody. You do not treat people that way. Like I said, I've bumped into her since then at the shops, and I just go the other way. Like I said, she tried to have a heartfelt conversation with me once. But if I hadn't needed to go to the bathroom, either way, I wanted out. That woman is just a nasty piece of work. And I don't usually say that about people. I don't care who you are. You don't treat people like crap. So don't go off at people on public transit for this video. So yes, those were some of the interesting encounters that I've had on public transport. So this is the end of the mini-series that I'm doing that it revolve around public transport and taxis. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.